But let's get into this Wi-Fi tonight, this Wi-Fi jammer. I want to talk about this. So anyway, we have, we'll just do the basic reported facts that happened in this case. So Nancy Guthrie, 84 years old, disappeared from her Tucson area home during the early hours of February 1st, 2026. Investigators believe that she was taken from her bed. That is just now recently come out. And we had some inklings of that, of when Savannah talked on one of those videos pleading for her mother. And she even talked about Nancy's blood was found at the home's entrance, and we still know that some DNA and some DNA is still actively being processed. So you have publicly released footage that shows a masked suspect at the front door, and reporting says the camera was checked and obstructed. There have been more than 3,000 tips that have generated just post, a couple of days ago, but no arrest and no announcement of a suspect has been publicly named. Several apparent breaks lead to nowhere. An early detention was not the abductor. We saw that early on in the investigation. There was actually at one point a SWAT intervention at a home, and we've heard from some of those people that have come out and spoken about that. Look, there was probable cause to come in and speak with those people in the capacity that law enforcement did. So fake ransom texts. We had the letters to TMZ appeared unrelated, and then we had the one glove DNA that traced to a nearby restaurant worker. And we thought that was going to be like the linchpin. Like, here we go. We have the DNA off this glove. They go to the lab, they test it. And guess what? It traces back to a restaurant worker that's in the area. And I had this question the other day. Was this person at this restaurant, were they a hit in CODIS? Was there DNA in there? How did they get to that point? We still haven't heard anything about that. We probably never will until this is solved. So we'll move on here. So quick little timeline here. January 31st, last seen, Nancy's last seen at her home. That's what's been reported. February 1st, reported missing suspect captured on doorbell footage. That's at 1:47 a.m. We have the authorities that release a suspect footage and description. They come to find out when the FBI puts out the two adjacent photos, one with a backpack, one without, people go, wait a minute here. Those are two different times. And now they're starting to wonder, the theory is, did this suspect case the neighborhood before they actually went in and abducted Nancy? Were they there, days before, weeks before, months before? That's something that could help and be clarified in this investigation, but they're just not releasing any of this information publicly, which has been very annoying. It's like, come out and just clarify all this stuff. So we have Sheriff Nanos that says investigators are definitely closer. And we heard this the other day in an interview. I don't know how you guys feel about it. I have the poll up there in the chat. I said, do you think investigators are close to naming a suspect? Let's see. 39% of you say yes. 61% of you say no. So we have the FBI and LE. They came out, and this is on March 5th and 6th. They come back out to the neighborhood. They can canvass the neighborhood about the internet and camera glitches. And then as of today, search enters new month, 3,000 plus new tips. No arrest, dead-end leads, and the lab work is still continuing. And I talked about that earlier. So moving ahead. So we have the quick official timeline, and I locked this down in my live stream the other night. So we have at 9:48 p.m., Nancy arrives and her garage door opens, marking her return to safety at her residence. At 9:50 p.m., the garage door closes. That's 2 minutes. Garage door closes, signifying the last moment of normalcy before the night's events unfold through the night. At 1:47 a.m., and this is where I talked about the other day, on my live, that this is the most critical point in the investigation, because this is when we know the suspect makes actual contact in and around Nancy's residence. That is the starting point of this investigation, the most critical moment. So the doorbell camera disconnects, creating a crucial gap in surveillance coverage that raises questions about the events. And then at 2:12 a.m., software detects someone as present on camera. And that's what we heard about. Is there a second camera? Is there a second device? Was the camera taken out? Did it trip maybe a beam that's inside the house, like a motion detector? But there's no video of this said 2:12 a.m. event. Not that we know of. Is this something that law enforcement and FBI is holding back? So yet, no recording that available, leading to public speculation and debate. Now, moving along. So this is what I said in my live stream the other night. The anchor timestamps, the key moments that define the time of events. At 1:47 a.m., the doorbell camera is disconnected, raising questions about the events that transpired during this critical moment. At 2:12 a.m., the software detects someone on camera. However, no recording is available, and that's what I talked about. Was it a motion sensor? Was it a camera that had a motion sensor on it and the camera wasn't working? What was it? Give us a little bit more information, law enforcement. Give us a little bit more information, FBI, Pima County Sheriff's Department. Please fill us in. What is it? And then at 2:28 a.m., Nancy Guthrie's pacemaker app disconnects from her phone, making another critical point in the unfolding narrative. Okay. Now, let's talk about the video and digital evidence. What has been described publicly? So we have the doorbell and neighborhood camera. Doorbell footage shows a masked suspect at the home. Some neighbor cameras reportedly had missing footage during the critical window. And this is what we're talking about, the Wi-Fi jamming. Is it possible? Could it have been possible? Some neighbor cameras reportedly had missing coverage. Reporting also mentioned a vehicle captured on a nearby camera around the time that was interest. And this was the debate. The key, I call it the Kia Soul debate. I think it's a Kia Soul, and I've talked about this on previous live streams as well. About a week ago, this footage, and you can see where the arrow's pointing here, of this said vehicle that was in and around just miles from the area, right around the time that Nancy Guthrie's her pacemaker disconnects, and this car was leaving from that direction. And I think it's a Kia Soul. Some people say a Land Rover. Some people have said a Nissan Sonata. I don't know. That still hasn't been clarified. But we do know when this came out, law enforcement was like, yeah, we know about it, but we're not really looking into it. And now I guess they're looking into it again. Yeah. So why tech glitches matter? When multiple cameras or networks fail at the same time, investigators may explore routine outages, and that's ISP and the power outage. We have device and cloud issues and deliberate disruptions, tampering, or interference. And come to find out, there is a junction box that's in that neighborhood that looks like it might have possibly been tampered with. And that's some new information that came out in the last couple of days here. And then the investigation triage, not proof of jamming. So again, just throwing speculation. Nothing has been 100% confirmed at this point, but it is a possibility. It could be a possibility in this. So jammer theory, the strongest case for and against. And then we have so why people suspect it. Neighbors were reportedly asked about outage and glitches and missing camera footage. Wireless cameras, cloud updates, and app alerts are vulnerable to signal disruptions during these times. And then theory suggests planning, continuation, and effort to reduce digital evidence. Why experts doubt it. And we just heard this in the video just previous to this. Clearer recovered porch video cuts out against a sustained blackout right at the entry point. And that is the video that we have seen looped over and over and over again, a million times, of that 1:47 a.m. entrance or possible entrance into Nancy's home. And then we have a neighborhood-wide impact would likely require much more powerful gear than a simply portable jammer. And then we have handheld ratio or ordinary outages remains plausible alternative explanation. I mean, in this situation, it would take a lot of equipment to jam all those Wi-Fi, in my opinion, to jam all those Wi-Fi signals that are going on. I mean, you would have to have either a very large piece of equipment or a major outage at that time. So that's the way I look at it. So the best, let's see. I'm going to move on here. So if a jammer was used in general, if a jammer emits radio interference at the same bands of a Wi-Fi device, and you can see that little handheld Wi-Fi device. That's usually what it does, and it has different signals on there because they might not know what the actual signal is at the home, but there's different frequencies that your Wi-Fi can run on. Mine is a dual band, and I don't know the frequencies offhand. I think it's like 2.5 and maybe like a 4.5 or 5. Um, and there's Wi-Fi's that have multiple bands on it, that you can connect to different bands, so you're not throwing off or draining the signal on another one. So that's, what you're seeing here. This probably runs different types of bands on it and can jam and interfere those different frequencies. So effect can include camera feeds dropping, devices disconnecting, and cloud updates failing. And that's what this device is used to do. It does not hack the camera. It basically disrupts the signal path. Real jamming often affects multiple devices nearby rather than one specific isolated camera. So why the theory came up in the situation? Reported not available neighbor footage. We're going to see that here in a second. I'm going to be sharing at the end of this presentation. We'll go to Brian Enton's reporting, and we'll see about that camera that's in the area. Reported internet and camera glitches were in the area. Speculation about a visible device or antenna in the suspect's pocket, and we just saw that in the beginning of this presentation. And these clues may justify testing the theory, but do not prove it. And just a reminder for the live stream, legally operating and selling jammers is illegal and can endanger public safety and communication. Yeah, I mean, we know that, but I got to put that little, I don't urge anybody to go out and buy a Wi-Fi jammer. The FBI might be calling you in this case. So new skeptical reporting on the jammer theory. So we have several experts now say that the jammer theory may be less likely than it first appeared. The biggest reason, investigators recovered the unusable front door video, which does not fit a clean, persistent blackout at a point of entry. They also urged that neighbor-wide disruption would likely require much more powerful and simple than a simple handheld device. And I said that as well, too. And that, I'm very strong on that theory as well, too. I think it would take a hell of a lot of power and a hell of a lot of bandwidth to knock out, several, and you even see the distance on that road of the houses to the road. A lot of these houses sit back, and there's a lot of rock and, cacti or cacti, right? Cacti in the area that could, have a hard time getting past that digital signal and jamming these signals. So I think it would take a very strong piece of equipment rather than, something like the size of a iPhone, with some antennas on it. That does not rule out jamming. It lowers the confidence and is best fit for public evidence so far. We're going to hear from Morgan Wright. He says recovered, and this is an expert in this area, and we just actually saw him in the video just prior to this. Recovered porch video makes a close-range jamming blackout harder to square with the public evidence, and we've seen video in this. And Lisa Miller, another expert in this field, the video did not look glitchy, and objects in the suspect's pocket could be a radio rather than a jammer. And then Betsy Smith says, if the offender really planned around the jammer, that suggested more sophisticated and targeted operation than the front door behavior shown. Yeah, I mean, it looked very discoordinated or discombobulated when this said suspect came up to the door. We've talked about that before, and I want to get into more detail about that in my next live about Nancy Guthrie. I want to go back and really break down that motion and that movement of the suspect, because I always thought they were startled by the camera. Like they kind of didn't know it was there. And I always thought this motion, like trying to block the camera, but then it didn't make sense. I'm going to go back. I'm going to take weeds after I've been basically spotted on this camera. I'm going to put weeds up to block the camera. That didn't make a lot of sense either, but we'll get more into that at a future live. All right, moving forward. So again, hearing from Morgan Wright, and I like this explanation. He says, as you get closer with a jammer, the signal starts getting interfered with, he revealed. The closer you get to the source of the signal, which is the router with the Wi-Fi access point, then you might get a total blackout. Referring to residents who claim to have an issue with the footage, Wright said, if they say, well, I had an internet outage, it's got nothing to do with an RF jammer. That RF jammer would have to be high-powered military stuff to affect the neighborhood. So crazy stuff again. And then we have the new caution points. A neighbor with a wide outage would likely require much more power than a small portable jammer. We talked about that. A visible pocket device can be handheld radio, the walkie-talkie instead of the jammer, and that was what we saw. And many people have speculated over it. The clear and recovered front door looks harder to urge for persistent blackout right at the entry point. Officials still have not publicly confirmed jammer use. So still talking about it. Okay, so we'll move on here. So the common causes of missing camera video, the ISP outage of the neighborhood could have been in maintenance, power dip, and battery depletion. Battery depletion. I said battery. Why did it just say battery? Battery depletion. And then we have Wi-Fi interference or weak signal. Believe me, we've all been victim to that, right? The cloud subscription configuration issues, device firmware crash. I've had those before. Physical tampering, device removed, covered, or damaged. And we had a camera that was covered in this case and actually was pulled off, that front door camera. Investigators typically say other cameras, router logs, ISP outage reports, and timestamps, and that's how they get all this evidence and digital evidence together. So how tech leads get validated. A hypothesis like jamming is tested against whether other devices failed in the same area, whether any footage exits during the window, whether failures or intermediate versus complete, known coverage gaps. And this is why law enforcement asked many neighbors about the glitches. And that's why the FBI was seen over there, canvassing the area. They were there for a few hours the other day, talking to the next door neighbor again, looking up at a camera. And we're going to see that camera here in a minute in Brian Enton's reporting. All right, moving ahead here. So we have the experts and the quotes. And let me just do this real quick. We'll take a quick pause. Let's see. Let's see. Is there justices? I'm lucky to figure out my own Wi-Fi much more a jammer. Yeah, exactly. Let's see. Looks like we have a new subscriber. Hello, Margaret. Thanks for subscribing. I appreciate that. Northwest Idaho said, first time on the channel. Everyone is so friendly. Hello, everyone. Well, thank you for being here, Margaret. I appreciate it. And I have lots of content here on Nancy Guthrie. You can go to my homepage, click on that tab, and have all my investigative videos on Nancy Guthrie. Let's see. Ellie says, I'm not convinced the front door is the entry point. No forced entry, or it could be used to leave and take the camera. Absolutely. I mean, that theory's been thrown around. There's been the multiple persons theory in this, where there more than one person that was involved in this crime, and that very well may be. And that's the thing. Like, it's just, we don't know. And that's why we throw these theories out and speculate. All right, so moving on here. Let's see. Retired Pima County SWAT commander Bob Krieger, I think it's Krieger, said detectives are getting closer every day, even if the public does not see an immediate breakthrough. Forensic analyst Joseph Scott Morgan likewise argued that from an investigator's standpoint, a month is not a long time. This is nowhere close to a cold case. So they're set on saying this is not a cold case. We're at 36 days now. There is a possibility, but as time goes on, I think the reality here is what? And this is the thing that we don't want to say. And I'm hoping that I'm wrong in this situation. But what is the one thing we don't want to say? 36 days have passed. We still can't find Nancy. We know that she's elderly. We know that she requires daily heart medication. We know that she has a pacemaker. Probably the stress alone has been a lot, right? And we might be at the reality that Nancy may be gone. That could be the reality of this. I hope not. Then we have Chris Nono Nanos says, Sheriff Nanos has said investigators are definitely closer and are working thousands of leads. Remember the other day when we heard about the said Kia Soul video? What did he say? I'm checking out hundreds and thousands of vehicles from that night. I'm like, that's a little bit of an overstatement, don't you think? I don't think there's hundreds of thousands of vehicle out at what 2 o'clock in the morning driving around Tucson. I find that hard to believe. He also said release too much detail would be irresponsible if it risked the integrity of the case, which helps explain why public updates may feel thin. Heather says Sheriff Bobblehead. I love that. All right, moving on here. So, apparent break-in breaks that did not solve it. A man briefly detained early in the case was later cleared. A California man accused of sending fake ransom notes appeared unrelated to the abduction itself. Black glove found near the scene were traced by DNA to a nearby restaurant worker, but not the suspect. We talked about that in the beginning of this. These dead ends make the case feel stuck publicly, even while investigators keep working other evidence. What still may be happening behind the scenes? Craig Rogers, a retired FBI special agent, says, I'm confident there is a good amount of familiar research underway concerning the DNA samples found in the residence. I hope so. I hope so. And we still know that DNA is still being processed as well. So why the quiet phase still matters? Authorities say that other DNA evidence is still in the lab analysis. The familiar research or investigative genetic genealogy, say that 5 times fast, is underway, and it would be great. It would generate leads, not proof on its own. Other future suspects would still need standard cooperation, and officials have not publicly confirmed the exact workflow. So we have the ambiguous loss plus audience exhaustion. AP framed the family ordeal as ambiguous loss, the trauma of not knowing whether a loved one is alive. I wouldn't even imagine going through that. I couldn't even imagine what Savannah and her family are going through at this point. We just saw the other day, she's returned to the Today Show, and I'm sure that was really hard. And like, how do you wake up and live with this every day, not knowing where your mom is? Who took my mom? Why did they take her? What is the meaning behind all of this? Will this case, and then the biggest thing is like, will this case ever be solved? Will we ever come to a conclusion? Will we ever have a suspect? Is this going to be a month from now? Is it going to be a year from now? Is it going to be 10 years from now? What is it going to be? Where is the break? When is it going to happen? I can only imagine what that family's going. I couldn't imagine what that family's go through. So is the loved one alive, injured, or gone, or having no clear resolution? At the time, newer reporting describes a public mood of fatigue and fading, hoping after weeks of headlines without an arrest. And I want to give a lot of credit to the journalists that are still down there. Brian Enton is still down there reporting. YouTube investigator JLR has been down there. Amongst others, Michael Ruiz, who I follow on X, is still reporting on this case. So, there still is a lot of media attention down there and hoping that we get a break. So it says, hope, let's see, Joseph Scott Morgan says, hope may be wanting more than interest, but that does not mean the case is cold. Investigators move on law enforcement timeline, not the public's. This is why they explain the family pain can intensify even while official updates become more limited. I can only imagine. Okay, what the public in the area can do responsibly. If you live in and around that area, if you're in and around Nancy's neighborhood, or even in and around Tucson, and you know something about this case or have seen something, the best thing to do, if you have any footage that has not been turned over, what you can do is preserve any camera footage from the relevant dates, times. Do not overwrite it. Write down the exact timestamps of the outages, offline alerts, or camera gaps, or if you have any camera footage that could be helpful in this case. If you live nearby, share the IP outage information, if any, and exact location, times with investigators. Do not publicly accuse cleared or unnamed people. Send tips to law enforcement instead. And you can always notify law enforcement by calling 1-800-CALL-FBI. And that's going to end my presentation. So I hope some of this cleared up a little bit more of the what is this Wi-Fi jammer Hey, everybody. Thank you for watching this video. If you like this video, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe and comment down below. Also, turn on that bell notification so every time I go live or drop a new video, you guys will know. And somewhere around here, a box is going to pop up and you can see another related video to this channel. Again, I'm Brian. This is LTL Media, and I appreciate your time. Talk to you soon.